Hi everyone, thanks for coming back for part 2. In my last video, I was just pointing out all the times you see the letters DNA coming up in this table, and especially right around the strand right here, which I showed a few of them already. But you also see another DNA here, and this DNA is right next to these other two DNAs that I had just pointed out. In the last video, you see one coming down this way, coming down from the D in Adam, and then you see one coming this way from the M in Adam, and then you have another one right here making like a right angle with those two other DNAs. And like I said, anytime you see the word "and," it's DNA backwards, and I don't think I've seen the word "and" or the letters that make up the word "and" so many times in a table before. And I don't know if that's stretching, but it just seems like those letters are all over the place in this table. But I want to show you something else. Over here where you have this DNA, it's like you have another DNA backwards this way. So you have DNA, and then you have a man, and then you have DNA backwards. And that's the same case with the DNA that's right next to the word seed here. So and next to the strand, you have the letters DNA, and then you have DNA backwards coming from that D, which also makes another DNA this way. And then in between those two DNAs, you have a man. And this reminds me of a verse that I want to show you. It's in Daniel 2:43, and it says, "And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay." So this seems to be all about mixing the DNA with the seed of man, and who they are that's talked about in here. This table actually makes an allusion to that as well. Over here where you see this word, it talks about the sons of Ehud. I had noticed that because this whole matrix, if you look at the scriptures, it's all about genealogy. So I thought the genealogy, where all of this stems from, must be important. And at first I had looked up the word Asher, but that's really not the beginning of this strand of genealogy. This strand of genealogy, where these two names are combined, seems to stem from the sons of Ehud. And so when you look that up, let me pull up that verse. Okay, that's Chronicles 8:6. Well, okay, it says, "These are the sons of Ehud, these are the heads of the fathers." And when you look up Ehud, oh, actually that means united. So I might have gotten a little confused, but that is interesting as well, because you see these two names right here united, and this is right at the top. It says the sons of Ehud, which means united, and then you see these two names coming up united. But there was another word. I had actually looked at this yesterday early in the morning, so I don't remember everything. So let me just pause it and see where that other word was. Okay, I just realized it wasn't actually a word. It was actually a phrase, which is up here at the top. And it says, "These were the children of Asher, heads of the fathers' houses, choice and mighty men of valor, chief of the princes." Okay, so this is talking about the mighty men of valor, the chief of the princes. And if you look at this term mighty men, you'll see what that refers to. But before I pull that up, I just want to show you that this word ehud, which means united, it also means joining together. So like I said, it's kind of like the DNA strand where the two sets of chromosomes have been joined together and intertwined, and it's showing that name right at the top of this twisting of these two names right here. But let me pull up mighty men and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so that takes you to Genesis 6:4, and it explains to you who the mighty men are. It says, these were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And if you look up the word giants in the King James, you'll see that it's the Hebrew word Nephil or Nephilim. Nephilim is the plural. So it's the word for Nephilim, which are the fallen angels. And that is the word that's used in that's used in the King James is giants. And it's talking about the mighty men of valor, the chief of the princes. So it's like this is identifying who this DNA strand represents, or the seed that's being represented, that's being joined with the seed of man. Because like I said before, it has DNA and then a man in between it, and then DNA backwards. So it's like an intertwining of the seed of the mighty men with the seed of a man. And that looks like what is being depicted here in the imagery, in the visual imagery of this table, which I want to show you a DNA strand. I'm not sure if I have it. Okay, here's one right here. And you can see the two sets of chromosomes coming together to form a strand, the 23 with the 23. And if you look at this part over here, it shows, you know, what all these things look like. And I guess a section of the strand would be what's considered a gene. And then if you go back to the table, as you can see, this is all, let me go back to the last one. This is all about genealogy. And within the word genealogy, you have the word gene. And another thing that I had noticed when I was doing this table is that I had noticed the word carried a couple of times. So I had, in one of these tables, I had actually put that in, so it would highlight the word carried. I put in carried gene. So you see gene here, and then carried. And then I had put carried DNA in one of the tables. So you see DNA up there in ELS form. And so it definitely seems to be alluding to DNA. Okay, another thing that I wanted to point out is when I was looking at this table yesterday, I had noticed this term right here, which to me looked like Manhattan. I know that's not the spelling for Manhattan, but that just jumped out at me, and that's what I thought it looked like. But I didn't think too much of it, and as you can see, it's right next to where it says DNA right here. I didn't think too much of it. I was probably going to mention that it looked like that, but that's really as much as I thought about it. But this is another reason why I'm glad I saw this video first, because right at the beginning of this video, when Jonathan Kleck was talking, I saw the word Manhattan over here, and it inspired me to look to see if the Twin Towers were in Manhattan, because I didn't even know that, or I had never made that connection before. I knew the Twin Towers were in New York, and I knew that Manhattan's in New York, but I really didn't know that the Twin Towers were in Manhattan. That's not something I ever thought about. I don't know that much about New York. And so I looked up to see if the Twin Towers are in Manhattan, and I pulled up images. And as you can see, when you pull up, I'm not sure what I had Googled, something like, are the Twin Towers or is the Freedom Tower in Manhattan? And it came up with all these images. And when you look at these images, it's almost like seeing the two DNA strands being intertwined into one. That's what it looks like, because sometimes you see the two, and sometimes you see the two twisted together into the Freedom Tower, into one. So that's another thing I wouldn't have thought of if I hadn't seen this video by Jonathan Kleck. But there's a lot more that I'll just keep going back to the video to point out. But that's just one more thing. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is this word right here that's within this word that looks like Manhattan. And it's the word Hatan, which means bridegroom in the Hebrew. And I want to talk a little bit about that word, but I just want to show you the next table, because in the next table I had put in the word anti, and that came up, but I had tried to put in Christ or Messiah to see what anti. I think I even put in God. I'm not sure. I want to try that real quick and see if God comes up. Fits. Let me take out Eden. Okay, God does come up, but as you can see, the word anti came up, and I wasn't really sure what the anti was for, but you can see the letters here coming up, and then you can see God coming up this way. But I also thought about that word Hatan, which means bridegroom. So it could also, as well as being anti-God, it could be referring to the false bridegroom, because there's always a true and a false. And as you can see here, the term for bridegroom comes up. And there's a lot of strange things associated with this word, because if you look in Scripture, there was this really strange statement that was made by Zipporah. It says, "But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. 'Surely you are bridegroom of blood to me,' she said. So the Lord let him alone." And so there's a lot of controversy or confusion about what she was talking about and what that means. And, oh, okay, over here it shows someone had did a study on it, and it talks about all the different meanings for the word Hatan. In the Hebrew it means bridegroom, but it can also mean father-in-law. And it's also a word that's used in the Arabic, and in the Arabic it means circumcision, I believe, and it also means a child. So this has a number of meanings, and it even has a meaning in English. In English it means to order, command, to call or name, to be called or named. So there's several different meanings for this word Hatan that's coming up right next to this strand of DNA. And I'm not sure what is meant by it, but this would be the Hebrew spelling. It actually has a C in front of it, but phonetically it sounds like this. And I had also put it in an ELS form, and that came up as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to get it up before I run out of time, but as you can see here, it comes up in the yellow in ELS form. And I'm going to have to continue in the next video.